This is the third pillar of a powerful inner life out of which we as leaders can build high and wide to impact others. It looks at the great danger of leading without Jesus. In other words, if we're too busy to abide with Jesus and end up relying on our gifts and experience or talents, the fruit of what we do will be very limited. This chapter looks at our need to slow down for loving union with Jesus. So let me begin by defining loving union. It's to allow God and His will to have full access in every area of our lives. Loving union asks questions such as, to what extent is the door of my heart open to Him? Have I allowed the incessant demands of leadership to so preoccupy me that I don't have time to actually keep that door open continuously? So Jesus warns about the dangers of engaging in ministry activity without Him. In Matthew 7:21-23, He says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only those who do the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles?' Then I will tell them plainly, 'I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers.'" And Jesus confronts the self-deception in this passage of those who do wonderful things in His name. They prophesy, they drive out demons, they perform miracles. They're very impressive and successful in really helping people. What could be wrong with that? By all appearances, their efforts have the marks of a vibrant, growing ministry. But Jesus says one thing is terribly wrong. He says, "I never knew you." And the force of that biblical word in the verb to know refers to the intimate, the personal knowing of relationship. It's similar to the oneness of Adam and Eve in the garden when they were naked and without shame. We may be sincere in saying, "Lord, Lord," and have what appears to be a successful ministry. We may know a lot about God in our heads, but none of these things matter unless it comes from a deep and surrendered connection. That is a loving union with Jesus. The 7 sons of Sceva in Acts 19 were casting out demons like Jesus and Paul. The problem was they didn't have the relationship of loving union with Jesus that Paul had. So at one point, an evil spirit says to them, "Jesus I know and Paul I know, but who are you?" See, they had skipped over making a long-term investment in a life of loving union. The source of Paul's miracles were his relationship with Jesus. But rather, they rushed headlong into spiritual realities they didn't understand and were not equipped to deal with. As a result, they barely escaped with their lives. We see the same thing in Moses. He wanders away from loving union with God and took matters into his own hands when he struck the rock with his staff out of anger and frustration. And God named his offense rebellion and unbelief, and God prohibited him from actually entering the promised land. So the question is, what promised land might you be sacrificing by not remaining consistently in loving union with Jesus? It is possible to build a church or an organization or a team by relying on our own gifts and talents. We can serve Christ in our own energy. We can expand a ministry without thinking much of Jesus or relying on Him in the process. We can preach truths we don't live. And if our efforts prove successful, few people will even notice or take issue with the gaps between who we are and what we do. I know them well. So this study is going to invite you to slow down and build into your lives a structure, a rhythm that's going to make this kind of loving surrender possible. You'll be invited to strip the non-essentials from your life and make room for a larger, more expansive life in God through the development of a rule of life. So you'll want to take your time and do the How Healthy is Your Experience of Loving Union assessment that's found on pages 121 and 122 of the book, and ask yourself, what's preventing me from allowing God's will and presence fuller access to my life and my leadership? And this chapter is going to invite you to rearrange your life around an entirely new way of being a leader through the crafting of a rule of life that acts as a structure that will enable you to pay attention to God in everything you do. Enjoy.